here on Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection. Eli Hershkovich, Tom Bostwick, and now our new guest here in studio, Del Yates of Major Onions. Of course, the premier baseball writer on that website. Del, if the listeners haven't heard you on the website before or on the show before, if you want to explain what you do and what exactly you write about.
I write baseball for MajorOnions.com, and then I do the pre and the post for WLS 890's Notre Dame football radio station. And right now, that's what I got going on, Eli. So I'm pretty busy with, just coming off the hot stove and heading into spring training. So I did Sox Fest this weekend to find out what's hot going on with the White Sox, and then last week did a little give and take with Theo Epstein and the Chicago Cubs. So I've been really busy over the course of the last couple of weeks.
And we talk about the White Sox here, and unfortunately, Tom has that East Coast teams. Being a Phillies fan, he's not a White Sox or a Cubs fan, but that's always okay. He doesn't have to. You were talking about it, that the fans, there weren't a lot of fans at the Sox Fest today. We went yesterday, but today there weren't a lot.
Well, an interesting fact is last weekend, and you also have to take in consideration, Eli and Tom, that we're coming off maybe the worst season in the history of baseball in the city of Chicago. So last weekend, the Cubs Fest didn't have the same vibe that it usually does. I think last weekend was its 29th consecutive year of the John McDonough's great idea of bringing in these festivals. The former Cubs president and now Chicago Blackhawks CEO. There wasn't a whole lot of people there, and I've heard rumors that last weekend was the first time that the Cubs festival did not sell out in the 29 years of it. Cubby fans just aren't as excited about Theo Epstein's project on the north side as Theo is. And then on the south side, I blame a lot of this just not on the White Sox their marketing team, but also on the Palmer House. I just don't think the Palmer House, the way that hotel is built, and it's such a beautiful hotel, but it's not built for the modern day festivals and all that kind of stuff. There's different stories, and you go right, you go left, you go up a staircase here, and then get on an escalator. And Eli, you were with me last night at Sox Fest, and you see what I mean. I mean, it was just, you need a traveling secretary to take you around the Palmer House to be able to find where they want you to go to see all these great former and current White Sox players and management team.
Right, and I'm directionally challenged, so there's a problem with that as well.
I hear you. We went down to Miami for the national championship game a little over a year ago for Notre Dame, and I must have got lost 85% of the time down there. So, I hear you, Eli. I know where you're coming from.
And now, Tom, we talk about some Cubs here, and Adele was touching on them for a little bit. The new Phillies manager, Ryan Sandberg, of course. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? And obviously, he was there for a little bit, July or August and on. Having the former Cub, and Ryan Sandberg was mentioned a lot in Cubs rumors, managing there in Chicago for a little while, and the Cubs shut that down. So what are your thoughts on having a guy after Charlie Manuel, a very respected guy, maybe his time just ran out in the Phillies clubhouse?
I think what they did to Charlie was pretty sick because obviously winning the World Series, having that team, five or six straight NL East championships there, and Ruben Amaro, the GM, was crying during the press conference to fire him, and I thought that was a load of crap. But I think they used those last couple months as a tryout for Sandberg. They talked about him being the manager in waiting, and I'm excited. I thought he should have gotten more consideration for that Cubs job before they hired Sviam. But no, I think. Unfortunately, the talent pool is not great. They're saddled with Howard's huge contract, and they just re-signed Utley to a big deal, and there's just kind of no real direction right now for this Phillies team, and it's disappointing because, obviously with the Halladay, Lee, and Hamels, just 2-3 years ago, they were supposed to be winning World Series left and right, and it didn't work out. So, hopefully Sandberg can get the most out of these guys, and maybe the Phillies make another move, or they can unload some of this huge salaries.
You talk about big contracts, and Del and I were talking about this yesterday with Jose Abreu, and you were talking about this especially, Del, not having a big emphasis on having one of the biggest signings for the White Sox this offseason, maybe the biggest signing with the White Sox, a 6-year huge contract Jose Abreu signed with Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams, and now all of a sudden he's not the focal point of Sox Fest.
No, they of all the PR and all the publicity that the Tanaka signing gave the Cubs and the Yankees, especially the Yankees because they were able to sign him. The Abreu contract, that was probably the first big offseason move in Major League Baseball. So it really just coming fresh off the World Series. Everybody's kind of burnt out as a fan with baseball at that point because it's such a long season. I really thought the Abreu thing the signing kind of came at the wrong time for the White Sox to be able to grab that headline. And then you look at the Sun-Times today, and in the back of the Sun-Times in big bold type, there's Kenny Williams, big face, smiling with White Sox boss. It was the headline. And you've got to wonder what Rick Hahn had to have thought about today, who's trying to become, a lot of rumors inside the media, a lot of rumors. The fan base believes that Kenny Williams is still pulling the strings on the south side of Chicago. You open up your Chicago Sun-Times today, and there's Kenny saying he's still the boss. So I really feel for Rick Hahn. Is Rick Hahn just Kenny's yes man, like Jed Hoyer is on the north side with Theo Epstein, or is he his own man? And I hope to be able to talk to Rick Hahn tomorrow about that, because today, in the press conference, you were really pretty much only available for one question to either Rick Hahn or Robin Ventura, who sat there and took questions together, which was a bit odd. But hey, who am I?
Who are you? Who are you to second guess the White Sox moves?
Yeah, they're used to being second guessed. But the White Sox, I like some of the things they did. I talked to Ken Harrelson after the presser, and I asked Kenny. I said, what do you think of these moves that Rick's made? And he said, on the surface, I liked them because it brought in a lot of young, fresh talent and fresh legs. But till we get to the middle of spring, after split squads and some games are being played, we really have no idea how good these guys are, especially now with Abreu. But then I talked to Steve Stone, and Stoney says that he's talked to different scouts, and he's seen Abreu hit a little bit, and he says Abreu is a legit bat. So we'll see. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Abreu to be the guy that the White Sox really haven't had in the middle of their lineup since Tomey and Konerko were in their primes.
Did Hawk Harrelson also start off the conversation with, I'll tell you?
Yeah, he did. And, interesting thing is when you get Hawk with no microphone or no tape recorders around him, he's very frank. He'll tell you who he thinks can play and can't play, and he's very opinionated, even when the cameras and the microphones are turned off.
And I'm sure he doesn't want to get into another argument with Steve Stone and himself again in the booth. Again, Tom and I were talking a lot about this last year with the White Sox struggles. It had a lot to do with the middle of the lineup. Mm-hmm. And Alex Rios was on and off. His batting average moved up to 290 for a little bit in June when the White Sox got to 500, and then it went back down. So for the White Sox, you're looking at Abreu and Davidson. These power bats that the Sox just picked up, the young power bats, are going to have to make a quick impact in Chicago.
Oh, no doubt about it. And the biggest issue the White Sox have last year and going into this year is they couldn't catch the baseball. And they could have won a lot of more games. They certainly wouldn't have lost 99 if they'd have just caught the baseball. I thought Viciedo in left. I thought Diaz in center were the worst defensive outfielders I've seen in some time. You had Diaz taking balls off his shoulder, off the top back of his neck at times. You have Viciedo, who really, and I talked to Ken Harrelson about this, and Harrelson agreed with me. He's a DH, and I don't even know if he's a DH, because can he hit enough to be a DH? And another question I'd love to have asked Rick Hahn, but wasn't allowed, and maybe I'll get a chance tomorrow, is, Tom, you've got Viciedo, you've got Adam Dunn, you've got Paul Konerko now, and you've got this kid from Cuba. They're all DHs or first basemen, and some of them can't even DH. What are you going to do with these young players in Viciedo and then the kid from Cuba? These are young guys that still need to get their at-bats. Is Dunn and is Konerko's egos going to allow those guys to actually take at-bats away from him? I doubt it. You're talking about two guys that have hit a lot of home runs at the big league level and had a lot of success. Their egos are going to take control of them by late May, early June.
Yeah, no, and there's obviously a glaring middle hole in the middle of that Sox lineup because Dunn, well-documented struggles.
Today he took a lot of boos and a lot of questions about the catching position. I think the one thing Rick Hahn and the White Sox front office had to have just been not wanting to deal with going into this Sox Fest with questions from the media and the fans is, what are you going to do behind the plate? You've re-upped Tyler Flowers another year. You've got this Fagley kid, the former Indiana Hoosier, who I don't know if he can hit. A lot of scouts say he can't. if you're talking about winning, and I never heard, I'll give the Sox credit, or you can not give them credit. They never talked about winning this year. And Hawk, who's the biggest homer of them all, he talked about 2015 and 2016. A lot of the talk was just like a week ago with Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer. There was just talk about 2015 and 2016. And what does that tell your fan base? Why should they come out to see these products while they're not lowering the ticket prices, fellas? So why should I, as or a guy that's from Northwest Indiana or out in the north suburbs of Chicago, why should he and his wife and his 2 kids come out and spend a few $100s to see 2 really bad ball clubs? And I really think we're going to see record-setting bad baseball yet again in the city of Chicago this summer.
And I think the attendance numbers will obviously follow suit. That I went to a couple of Cubs games last year, and I had a good time, but the baseball was not good. And that obviously Wrigley's falling apart. But you mentioned it. Both teams are not looking at this season, 2014. It's really just to get the at bats for Abreu, get the at bats for the young guys, and get the young guys through the Cubs system up into the majors. But in another sense, what does that say to the players too? Samardzija and Castro and Rizzo and these guys who are starting to get into their prime. They're just wasting away years on teams that have already given up before the season even starts.
Well, you look at Jeff Samardzija, and there's a 29-year-old guy that towed the rubber for over 200 innings last year. And I've got my questions. I don't know if he's a top-of-the-rotation guy. Jeff does think he is that. I don't know. A scout I talked to from the Diamondbacks back in the winter, he thought that he told Kevin Towers, who's the general manager of the Diamondbacks at the time, that if you go out and get him, and I think he's a good pickup, but we need to make him our closer. He's not a starter. So different scouts have different opinions on Jeff Samardzija. I think Samardzija on a good rotation, on a pennant contender, I think he's a 4, maybe a 3. I would rather have him in that setup role, maybe that closer's role, because he does have a closer's mentality if you're around him.
Right.
But, do you really want to give Jeff Samardzija $55, $60 million over 4 or 5 years? I don't know.
It's going to be interesting considering, again, being a wide receiver from Notre Dame, now converting back to what he liked to do, and he wanted to play baseball, and now he's pitching. And the question is, can he be a full-time starter in this league? Again, you talked about it, potentially going to the pen if he was traded to Arizona. It doesn't look like that's going to happen at this point, but who knows? The offseason still has a little whiles to go.
Eli, I don't think the Cubs will trade him this spring. They're not going to get what they can get for him around July. And from a PR standpoint, and a lot of Cubs, the business people in the Cubs business office have told me that this is a team that did not draw over 2 million fans. That went through the turnstile? Did they sell over 2 million tickets? Excuse me. Did they sell over 2 million tickets? Yes, but in the turnstiles, they saved more like 1.9, and that's staggering if you're the Cubs. Yeah. Think of all the millions of dollars you lost out on with sodas, hot dogs, pizza, stupid T-shirts that are overpriced. And parking. That's a lot of money that the Cubs lost out on. And I really believe this. I think Tom Ricketts is having financial issues that he can't put money back into this team. I think this player development crap is all a bunch of nonsense. I think he's got issues with the rooftop owners, and he's got debt from when he purchased the Cubs. I don't think he can go out and get the big time free agents. Now, other people, Bruce Levine told me he believes totally that the Cubs were totally in on the Tanaka signing, and they might have been. I'm not saying they weren't, but I don't think he can be the L.A. Dodgers or the New York Yankees like a lot of Cub fans want him to be right now. I think if Major League Baseball could do it all over again when they sold this team to Ricketts, I don't think they'd sell it to Ricketts. I don't think Ricketts has as much cash to be able to pay off that debt service that the Cubs and Major League Baseball want you to think. And that's my biggest worry for Cubs fans.
All right, and we're going to take a quick break here. And again, when we come back, we're going to keep touching on some baseball. And we'll talk about, Dell mentioned that the Cubs, missed out on Tanaka, and the White Sox did as well, even though Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams said they weren't in as much as they thought they were going to be. But again, we'll talk about that and the potential of the Sox and Cubs contending. We'll mention that as well as the top free agents left here in free agency and the hot stove going on MLB Trade Rumors.